everybody, it's Mark Vang with the Sanctuary Networking Community on Google+. And today we're having a Google Hangout where we're going to talk about LinkedIn. We have Natascha Thomson and Greg Cooper with us today. Both of them are LinkedIn experts. First, I'll tell you a little bit about Sanctuary. We have a small private community on Google+, and we talk about all kinds of things. We interact, talk social media platforms. Many of us are small business owners or entrepreneurs, and we talk about ways to be more productive. So today we're going to focus on LinkedIn, and as I said, Natascha is joining us today. She is a social media marketing consultant and trainer, and she's also co-author of 42 Rules for B2B Social Media Marketing, and that has a bunch of LinkedIn tips as well as some other social media tips in it as well. And she's currently working on a LinkedIn ad campaign with a Global 2000 software company, and so she's really dialed in on the LinkedIn stuff. We're going to get some great info from her. And joining us from the UK is Greg Cooper, who is a LinkedIn trainer and B2B marketing coach, and he's also a social media trainer and speaker, and he offers regular workshops over there in the UK. So if you're over across the pond, you can look him up over there. And he's also going to be adding some Google Plus workshops soon. He offers some entry-level social media training, so he'll be bringing Google Plus into the mix. So Greg, let's just get right into it here. Why should anybody care about LinkedIn? We have all these other networks, so why should we care about LinkedIn?
Sure. Well, LinkedIn, as you know, is a professional business network. It's actually the professional business network. It's the world's biggest, richest, most accurate database, and it's free to access. Currently, I believe there are 100 million users in the USA and 14 million in the UK, and the projections are that that's going to grow to about 600 to 700 million by 2020. In my own network, I have about 14 million people in the extended network. It's rich, full of decision makers. I can reach pretty much anybody in that 14 million extended network. But it's not just about finding customers, it's also about being found. I saw some research recently that 66% of B2B decision makers use LinkedIn when they're selecting a supplier. So, if you're in the B2B marketplace, LinkedIn's a place to be. If you're not active on LinkedIn, then it's a wee bit like putting your hand behind your back and blindfolding yourself.
I just want to add to that briefly, Greg. I absolutely agree with everything you said. Also, as a marketer, obviously you need to be where your audience is, and I think there are few serious B2B communities. Maybe Google Plus is becoming that, but definitely. So, Greg, let me ask you this. As LinkedIn is so important, a lot of people ask, how can they optimize their profile?
Okay. Yeah, so the profile is obviously, the individual profile is one of the key building blocks of LinkedIn, the personal brand. So what I've done, I've put together a couple of points, 10 points actually, like kind of bullet points that I'll just go through here. I'm going to share my screen here so you can see this. Hopefully you guys can see that okay now. Is that okay? Should be able to see my profile. Okay, so I've just got 10 points. I'm going to really quickly go through these because there are points that I come across a lot. So the first one is to use your name that everybody knows you by. I mean, my name is Gregory Cooper, but everybody knows me as Greg Cooper. So I see a lot of people who actually put a different name on LinkedIn to what they're known by. This is very important to be found on LinkedIn, so it's really important to use your name that you're known by. Secondly, underneath your name is a line which is called the professional profile, the professional headline. Now, it defaults to your job title, but this is a really important piece of real estate. So I recommend to all my clients that this is a great place to put in some keywords, to put some bullet points, or to put a branding statement. You probably can't see it in great detail on your screen, but what I've got on mine, I've bullet pointed the key areas that I work in. So moving to the left for a moment to the photo. LinkedIn themselves research says that if you have a photo, then you're likely to get 7 times more views than without a photo. And it needs to be a professional photo. I mean, Natascha, I'm sure you've seen lots of people. I've seen babies on there. I've seen people with drinks. I've seen people's wedding photos. You know, it needs to be a professional photo. Another tip here is with the location, which is underneath your professional headline. You actually don't have to put your location in. So if you're a salesperson or you're dealing with your customers are in a different location, say you're in New York, but you're selling to people around Chicago area. So you can actually put the Chicago area in there, because when your prospective customers are looking for someone who has your skills and expertise, they're going to be searching also for Chicago. So you can change your location. Moving down to the activity section here, LinkedIn have recently redesigned the profile page, and activity is now right up top. So all of your first degree connections will get visibility on your activity. So this is a really important area. So you need to make sure that you're regularly posting interesting stuff in that area. If we move down to the summary, I see a lot of people who actually don't bother to fill out a summary. The summary is the part, this is your kind of soft elevator pitch. This is the bit where you can give people an up-to-date picture on what you're doing now. It's become more fashionable, if you like, to write this in the first person. I know Natascha and I have had some conversations about this. I think it depends on who your audience is. If you're targeting very senior C-level audience, then perhaps you want to put a more concise, bullet-pointed summary in here. But if you're targeting, say, creative directors and advertising agencies, they want to know more about the story. So that's your summary, but very important to make sure you've got a good summary in there. And you can add now, LinkedIn has given us the ability to add media files. So you can see on my profile here, I've got a link to my blog. I've got a link to some courses I'm running. Down here I've got a link to a presentation I did, and along there I've got a video interview that I did. So these are all things that make your profile stand out. Experience section, again, you can add media files to this section. It's very important to fill this section in. A lot of people just put a one-liner in here with their experience, but actually the LinkedIn search will pull up keywords from your experience. So it's pretty important to put that in. It's a great opportunity to expand on what you've got in your summary as well. So if we move down to the skills and expertise section, this is a kind of bugbear for me, because a common problem that most people have is what I call the sort of legacy skills. So many of us have a portfolio career these days, and it's very easy for the skills that are listed there to actually not represent what you do now. The other thing is that since LinkedIn introduced the endorsements facility, slightly clumsily in my opinion, so that we tend to get endorsements for skills that actually we would prefer not to. So the thing with the skills and endorsement section is really, it needs to be actively managed. So you don't have to accept an endorsement, and you do actively have to go out and request people to endorse you for the skills that you want to be endorsed for. You need to select the skills on your profile that match what you're doing now, and as far as you can, these need to be meaningful. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you have as well, Natascha, seen people list things like management or Excel. It's completely meaningless. Everybody in business knows a little bit about management or something about Excel. So kind of moving down the profile here, you've got as much as you can fill in, the better. Obviously, you've got coursework, organizations you're affiliated to. Interestingly, there's a section on interests, and I was doing a search the other day, and one of the guys that came up on the search, actually it was a search for Salesforce, I was just doing a bit of testing, and I was searching for Salesforce, and a guy came up on my list, and the only place in his profile where Salesforce was listed was in the interest section. So this is, perhaps more important than people think. Let's move down. We've got sections for projects. Those projects you might be working on at the moment, or projects you've worked on in the past, and any publications you've been involved in. What's also interesting is you can change the order of all of the information in your profile. So if you want to move up, so say you got some publications that you are particularly proud of, you might want to move those up the order, and you might want to move down your academic qualifications.
I would add, Greg, that when you were talking about endorsements, and some people aren't really too keen on that, but it's kind of we're stuck with it. You have to manage it anyway, one way or another. You can, since as you point out, you can move these sections around, so you could always de-emphasize endorsements and move other things up into the top part of your profile, so that people maybe encounter that and are encouraged to interact with that. Hopefully instead of endorsements, but LinkedIn kind of throws them in your face anyway. But just wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, that's right. And if people are really not comfortable with endorsements, you can actually switch that feature off completely. But in my view, I say to people that endorsements are really kind of like a social signal, and to indicate that that's an area where you've probably got some expertise. The evidence of that is in the recommendations. So the recommendation section is still very important, and this is the kind of social proof combined with endorsements that creates credibility both for your personal brand and also for the for your company too. So that's a very quick sort of tour of the profile there. Did you want to say something about social proof there, Natascha, and pick up on that one?
I did. Great overview. I wanted to add a few points to some of the things you said. I think, for example, the picture is important on all social media channels because it's about trust. Obviously, you put yourself out there and there are risks involved, and if somebody doesn't have a picture, I think, well, either they have to hide something or they're not really serious about their engagement. So for me, that's a red flag. Also about the location, I never put my town. I'm a little paranoid about internet security, so try not to give away details that aren't essential about you personally that somebody else could use to steal your identity. My husband works in security, and there's actually a lot of famous people where there's 3 or 4 LinkedIn profiles that people have created in China, and they try to connect with people and get information that way. I mean, you can't imagine everything that's out there, so be careful. In regards to the summary, I agree with Greg. I think the summary is the most important part of your LinkedIn profile because it really gives you a psychological insight into this person. If I interview with anybody or I have any kind of conversation coming up, I look. There's these people, they write 3 pages, and it's all me, I did this and I did that and I'm the best. I mean, you know what they're like, and usually you meet them, that's what they're like. And other people write about my team did this and are much more collaborative. So I like to read between the lines to just get an idea of who somebody actually really is. Then in regards to overall the LinkedIn profile, because you were talking about the skill sets, Greg, I think it's important to think about what is your objective in your LinkedIn profile, right? Are you looking for a new job, or are you a partner manager at Oracle, or are you a recruiter? Depending on that, you should structure your profile and write certain things. If I were looking for a new job, I would probably make some changes to my profile, just like you update your resume when you apply for, ideally you update your resume for every job you apply for. And then I personally am pretty cynical about this whole endorsement thing because I'm sure you've all gotten endorsements from people you have no idea who they are, and how they know you are good at social media is beyond me. But it's a little bit a way like Facebook likes, right? Oh, you're a nice person, I want to poke you or whatever. So I think it's a little silly, but statistically I read it's relevant because if LinkedIn gets millions of people to be endorsed, at some point they can sell better advertising by saying, you know, we have, or to recruiters, we have X people with this skill set. Statistically, this is going to be relevant. Then recommendations, I think the recommendations are super key. I have a lot of recommendations and I've actively asked for them. You can't be shy. And I get comments from recruiters, wow, you have a lot of recommendations. So people really look at that. And then finally, something, Greg, we hadn't touched on was URLs and contact details. I really think it's important for people to fill in their blog links and their contact details, phone numbers, email. It's a little embarrassing if you go to somebody's page, you link in, and they have the email of their last job. That defies the purpose, right? And I wanted to touch also on a question we got on Google Plus from Ellen Hubbard, and she was asking about, can you blog on LinkedIn? And I wanted to refer to this here because in the old days, LinkedIn had all these apps that you could, for example, have an app that would serve up your WordPress blog on your LinkedIn profile, but they have discontinued this. So now, as Greg showed, you can have all these wonderful options to present your content, but you can't have your blog directly connected. And there is a blog on LinkedIn for, I want to say, celebrities. They call it influencers, and it's been widened. And if you are one of those people, approach LinkedIn, and they'll probably let you blog. Otherwise, there isn't a blogging platform. And Greg, I think it's because LinkedIn is supposed to be more engaging in the conversation. What's your view on that blog issue?
If you can link your, if your blog is on your website, you can actually link directly from your profile to your blog by using the media file links. So I've got my blog on my profile.
Right, but does it show actually the actual blog posts?
No, it doesn't. No, it's a.
You know, the app used to do that. That you could actually have each blog show up.
Yeah, it doesn't do that. No. The other thing, of course, Natascha, is that a lot of people will post their blogs onto groups and group discussions, which is the way in which people get, you know, some airtime for their blogs.
I totally
think that if we. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself there. I was just going to say, I think that LinkedIn, if you follow what they're putting out, they're very concerned about turning themselves into some sort of content distribution platform. And as you pointed out, Natascha, they're rounding up thought influencers or you know, wealthy celebrities, and they're working on making sure that that is the content that gets put out in front of you, for better or for worse. So that, and they really seem to have de-emphasized member ability to be able to push too much. I mean, you certainly have that entire rich area of your profile that you can add slide shares and videos and stuff like that, and but they seem to have turned that off a little bit. I was just curious, Kelly and Scott, endorsements are kind of mixed. People have mixed feelings about that. I wondered what either of you two felt about the endorsements feature, and also if you just want to introduce yourself briefly and say who you are, you know, stuff like that as well, since you're participating. Kelly, go ahead and lead off.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Drenner. I am pretty new here to SAP. I handle our social media content. Can you hear me okay? I know my headset might be kind of funky, but I'm pretty new here to SAP and to social media in general. I handle the @SAP Bay Area Twitter feed and learning a lot about content, and really enjoying my adventures in Twitter and the Twittersphere. In terms of LinkedIn, it's something that I've used and updated, you know, partially to find a job, and actually that was really mostly it. But now I'm seeing, you know, a lot of my colleagues and a lot of people that I used to work with are posting content based on their events or what they have coming up or what they find is interesting, and I think, at least for me, that's something that I want to start engaging in and using that as another tool to kind of say what SAP Bay Area is doing here and get kind of other similarly focused people engaged. In terms of the endorsements, you know, I get really weird endorsements. Like, I did an internship for like 1 month and this guy's endorsing me for policy, and I didn't even do policy work. So it's kind of hit or miss. And, I have like a million people that think I'm a great event planner. Yes, I'm a great event planner, but it's not really what I want to advertise in my profile, that all I do are events, which I don't, and it's not, a priority for me. So I agree with you guys that, having the LinkedIn endorsements, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's good if they endorse what you want, but, it might be sending the wrong message to those folks that are looking at your profile if you're endorsed for, 500 for event planning. So that's kind of my take on that.
Something I found in testing, I have a couple of test accounts, and they were getting endorsements even though I was getting it on my profile when I'd log in. I was being asked to endorse them for things, and these are blank test profiles. They have no employer, no skills, no education listed. So LinkedIn is at random saying, is test account number 1 good at HTML? Is he good at CSS? And so a lot of these weird endorsements you're getting are because LinkedIn is trying to get your friends to rat out your skills, I guess, so they're like, well, is Kelly good at this? Let's get that on her profile, because she must be shy if she doesn't want to put it up there herself. I don't know. I think the problem is your friends or your contacts might be trying to be nice and endorse you for something because they get presented with that blue box when they log in, and they're picking something that sounds, generic enough that they're not, committing to anything. And unfortunately, it's not really working out that well. So you have to keep, if you want to have that, you have to keep an eye on it. What about you, Scott? How's that been working out for you?
Oh, I see it as, particularly the endorsements portion of LinkedIn, I see it as truly LinkedIn's attempt to find a segmentation source to further market LinkedIn. I don't see it as something that's a value add for us as either hiring managers or peer-to-peer networking. If the endorsement itself versus a reference or even cited work in your own activity is far greater weight, and I just see that ultimately it's a way to drive activity for LinkedIn, to get people to treat LinkedIn as more of a daily or interimly daily kind of site visit, which I don't think they experience today. And secondly, I think to Greg's point, it is something that they'll use to market later, as we have the world's greatest population of developers, we have the world's greatest population of marketers. Not necessarily as a peer-to-peer value that it's intent, or maybe it's not intention, but masked as today. And so the way I look at it as a hiring manager is it's something I scan over, but truly I believe, just like everybody else, we're all getting endorsements from people we don't know around subjects that we did maybe 10 or 15 years ago in our career, or maybe even 2 years ago, that aren't relevant anymore.
So, Scott, that's a great segue into our next topic area, which deals with LinkedIn advertising. And you're right, everybody's trying to figure out how to make money. And I think an area that's often overlooked is the combination of things you can do on LinkedIn with owned, earned, and paid. And what that means is there are channels you own, like, for example, your LinkedIn profile, or if you had a company page, or if you ran a group on LinkedIn. And by owning it, you have a certain level of control, right? You can block people, you can push out content and things like that. And that's what most people are engaged in. Then earned means that you actually participate on other people's social channels. So if there's a LinkedIn group, say, I'm a marketer, so I'm part of a lot of B2B marketing groups, then you could contribute content there, and you earn a reputation by answering questions for other people, by sharing maybe your blogs, and becoming a part of the community. And that's very time consuming, but it is also one of the most effective ways to market on LinkedIn, because obviously you really build personal connections. And then the last element is paid. And paid, there's different options on LinkedIn, and I'm going to share my screen here for a second. Am I sharing my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Not. Headspace user error. Let me try this again. Okay. Oh, it wants to know which screen Okay. Anyhow, it's not letting me do this with my Firefox browser, but that's okay. What I was talking about was there's two options on LinkedIn to advertise. One is you can create an ad, and one is you can create a sponsored update. An ad obviously is something you pay for that shows up on the pages of the people you're trying to reach. That's very common. And then the sponsored update would mean that content you've created, for example, status updates or things you post in your group, you can promote that to a wider audience. And research recently has shown that at the moment, and these things change all the time, that the sponsored updates do the best, which kind of makes sense. It seems more organic. And there's a Forrester study that came out not so long ago, and I'm happy to share that later, that showed that while most marketers seem to focus on owned and earned, that actually if you sprinkle in a little bit of paid, it has a tremendous impact on the results you can achieve. And it's actually not that expensive on LinkedIn to do that. I want to very quickly cover the basics of how you do that and then give you an example. On LinkedIn, if you want to put an ad up, you go to your LinkedIn homepage and there's a business section and there's an advertising little thing you can click, and then it asks you what kind of an ad you want to produce. And I encourage you to go there and play with that. You can just put in some dummy text. You don't have to pay until the last click. So you can have a test ad. And you can also promote video, by the way. There's ways to promote different visuals and things. And then the most interesting part, which I think is one of the best kept secrets of LinkedIn, which reminds me a little bit of Google AdWords, is that you can go in and segment your audience. So for example, if I wanted to reach people in North America who are senior directors in a certain industry, once you're on this ad page, you can actually pick these options, and on the right-hand upper side, it will tell you how many people on LinkedIn meet that profile. And what's even better, if you think about, hey, do I want to advertise in the marketing group from Marketing Profs, you can see how many people of your target audience are in a particular group. And then is it worth your while to participate there? So I think everybody should go and play with that just to focus their marketing efforts, but that segmentation helps you to place an ad to reach your audience. And sponsored updates obviously are similar, where you can also segment, but you launch it in your own, I guess you could call it, newsfeed. I'd like to give an example of a campaign I have run with a client, and I'm going to make this brief, but just to give you an idea, we wanted to create a campaign where there was an active call to action. So we could create leads by taking people to a website, and if they registered, somebody would review the people who registered and decide are they a lead or not. And our goal was to achieve 550,000 impressions and 8 to 9 leads. What ended up happening was that the conversion rate from the impressions to leads was a lot lower than we had expected, but we reached all of our goals because our impression rate that we reached was a lot higher than we expected overall also. So we had over 5 million impressions and 9 leads. So the impressions obviously are awareness, and you can be a little cynical about that. Did anybody see it? But some people must have seen the ad, so there's some awareness result here, but overall we reached our lead goal in full. And I'm going to click here. I'm looking at some slides with some more detailed information. I wanted to share a few things. So few things to consider when you do such an ad, and I think this doesn't just apply for LinkedIn, is that obviously what the text is of your ad matters tremendously, so know your keywords. And the visual matters, and if you have a video, that matters. So LinkedIn lets you stage multiple ads at the same time, that you can have different ads, and then you can monitor on their dashboard which one is performing the best, and whenever you want, you can switch it out. Here's one thing to understand about LinkedIn that's important. You bid. So when you place your ad, you have to say how much it's worth it for you to display this ad. And they suggest a price, and you should usually at least pay that price. And then when your ads get served up, they have an algorithm. Everybody has their algorithm, right? Google, Facebook, secret algorithm. And if your ad underperforms, then they will show it even less. And if your ad performs well, then they will show it even more. So this puts the emphasis on you as a campaign owner to really stay on the ball and switch out your media. Not that you have to pay, because obviously if the ad doesn't get served up, you don't pay, you know, people don't click. But if you have opportunity cost, which everybody does, then you want to be as effective as possible. Then the other thing is your call to action has to be relevant, and you have to have a good landing page, because if people get a promise to the ad and then they go to the landing page and it's either different content or it has 5 calls to action, you know, people will not convert. So you cannot just blame LinkedIn if your campaign isn't working out, because it's complex. Then also, and this is my last point here, going beyond LinkedIn, I think as a social media consultant, I usually tell my clients, do not put all of your eggs in the basket of one platform, and unless that really were the only place where your clients actually get their information, which I think is unusual, right? Mostly people are in different places and niche communities. So you have to spread the information. If you write a blog or have any kind of content, LinkedIn is a wonderful place to promote that. You can engage in a group, you can even pay to have it promoted, but then you can integrate your LinkedIn account with your Twitter handle and automatically post some updates on Twitter. And you also want to promote it on Facebook and any other channel that you have available. I mean, email often gets disregarded, but it's very powerful. So make sure you use your whole integrated marketing program in your company to get the word out, and don't think, oh, I'm going to do LinkedIn here and that's going to be it. You don't want to create any silos. And you know, content is usually one of the hardest things for people to create. So once you have it, market the heck out of it and get your bang for the buck. And I could talk about this for hours, as you can tell, but I'm actually going to give Greg a chance to say something again. And Greg, I know you are pretty well versed in engagement and maximizing the value of groups on LinkedIn, so maybe you can talk about that a little bit, and that fits into the area of owned and earned.
Sure, Natasha. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed what you said about the ad platform, and the fact it's such a precision targeting platform. You can even target one company with your advertising is just phenomenal. So,
Greg, do you mind if I jump in for just a quick question? We got a question from Tom there that's probably right up your alley.
Yeah, sure.
He's asking, is there a way or a setting in LinkedIn to prevent some skill sets from displaying so you will not be recommended or endorsed for them because you are not qualified for them? So since you're the profile guy here, why don't you take a shot at that?
Yeah. There is, if you go into the edit profile mode, then you can actually delete or switch off or hide any endorsements. So you can hide individual endorsements from somebody for a particular skill, or you can take that skill out completely.
Okay.
And then can I add to that? I mean, you might have seen when you're asked to endorse somebody, a lot of the time there's a bunch of things that they ask you to endorse them for, and that you can manipulate. There's actually a function on LinkedIn, it's one of those things few people know, where you can go to a page and see other people in your industry, what kind of keywords do they use to be endorsed, and then you can pick the most popular ones and put those on your page, and then people will be asked to endorse you for that. So that's how you can control it.
Okay, cool. So picking up the groups subject again, the group's a fantastic opportunity to create engagement, but quite often what I find is that the first thing is that people need to be in the right groups, and a lot of people, for example, coaches might migrate to a group which is full of coaches, and retail people migrate to a group which is full of other retailers, and that's great up to a point where you're sharing and learning, but actually the groups that you really want to be targeting are the groups where your customers are, And you can find out which groups your customers are in by looking at their profiles. And at the bottom half of the profile, people display their groups. So that's the first thing with groups. You really got to be where your customers are. The second thing is really to find groups that are active and that you're going to get some engagement in. I've got a couple of examples here to show you. You see this group here, which is the social media marketing group, huge group, 707,000 people in here. But if you look at the activity in this group, so last week there were 987 discussions, but only 381 comments. So yeah, it's a huge group, not very much engagement. But in contrast, if you look at another group here, a smaller group, B2B social media, so here you've got, in the activity, you've got just 6 discussions last week, but you've got 60 comments. So it's important to use the stats that LinkedIn gives you to identify some of the groups that might be suitable. The other reason that, though, to join a group, say like which has a large audience, is that when you're in a group, you can message anybody else in that group. You can send a direct message to them. So for me, it's really useful to be in a group like the social media group, because that gives me access to those 700,000 people. Just going to turn that one off now. So when you're sharing in the groups, LinkedIn has got, people don't realize that LinkedIn has got a number of anti-spam mechanisms built in, one of which Mark was very involved in highlighting, which is SWAM, or site-wide auto moderation, where the group manager can actually switch you off from that particular group if your comments are felt to be spam-like. But that actually switches you off from all the other groups that you're part of. It puts you on moderation, actually. That's what it does. It puts you on moderation. So, but the groups are a wonderful place to get engagement, and it's about, like all social media, it's about sharing, adding value. It's about listening to people. It's not about just going in there and selling and promoting. You got some points on that, Natascha or Mark?
I'll just jump in real quick on the site-wide auto moderation bit. If this happens to you, what happens is a group owner, if they block you from a group, if they use either a block or a block delete action, you have to be pretty offensive for them to use a block delete, because that also removes all of your comments as well as kicking you out of the group. But it's also not uncommon in a group. Maybe one of the moderators will block you because they think maybe you made a promotional post if you shared a blog link. So it's not like you've really broken a horrible rule or done something offensive that this happens to you. For a long time, it was just a fairly common technique for people to just block you just to get you out of the group. And the problem was LinkedIn didn't announce when they made this change that now if you're blocked or blocked and deleted, this actually goes back about a year now. It also sets you to requires moderation in every other group. So let's say you've joined your max of 50 groups. You get kicked out of one group. Now, anytime you post to any of those other groups, you're going to see a little message, your post has been submitted for review. And the two problems with this is, first of all, it hits every other group you're a member of. Second of all, it doesn't give any kind of specific notification to those group owners, many of whom might have had you set to post freely, right? Your posting permissions might have been automatic. They don't get any special notification that you are now set to moderation. So it can be very frustrating for people trying to get that cleared up, because you have to try and contact a group owner or a group manager and explain it. And since LinkedIn didn't really announce it, it's kind of spreading, but they never really announced it network-wide. So a lot of people don't know what you're talking about when you're trying to say, well, I've got hit by this automatic thing. So not to dwell on it too much, but if you do participate in groups, be careful to pay close attention to the group rules. Some group owners can be very, sticklers for, if they don't want you to post blog links, they might block you and kick you out of the group for doing that. So you just kind of want to watch those posting guidelines. If you're not sure, whether a post is going to cross the line between promotional or not. If you're trying to announce an event but you feel it's of interest to the community, maybe contact one of the owners or managers first and say, look, here's what I want to post. Would you prefer that goes in promotions, or I think it's of interest to the entire group? Can I post it in the body in the main discussion area? And just kind of double check with that first as well. That's pretty much all I'll say on that. It can be a little frustrating for some people if they get hit with a SWAM action. So just be careful and watch the group rules there.
I wanted to add something to the engagement of groups, and I think it all comes back again to your objectives. If you own a group, the question is, who are you and why are you having this group? So, for example, I think a lot of, especially smaller companies, make the mistake they open a LinkedIn group with their company name. And if you're not a brand, I have to say, nobody cares, that you have a Acme XYZ LinkedIn group. You should think about what are groups that people would want to join, like your target audience. What do they care about? Where do they have knowledge gaps? Why would they join such a group? And then come up with a, build your new fence, how to automate marketing group or something like that. And you'd be surprised how many people just, it's nice to see your company name somewhere, but you wonder why don't you create community. And I think also LinkedIn groups, it's really important to think, and hello Paul Wisco, why do you want to create a community, and how do you create a community? And for example, this isn't LinkedIn but Google+, but Mark here, he has a fantastic group on Google+ called Sanctuary Networking Group, which he puts a lot of effort in moderating. And I worked for SAP doing marketing for their SAP Community Network for many years. To start off, it's not going to happen by itself. And Paul and I, who just joined here, for example, we do SV Forum, Marketing and Social Media SIG, and we have a bunch of communities, and it's really, really challenging to get that critical mass, and Kelly knows this from SAP Twitter, that critical mass for people to start doing things. So there needs to be somebody dedicated who builds this community and moderates it and keeps it clean and keeps it lively. Otherwise, it's going to fail, and I think the more people you have, the more of a self-managing group you can build. Look at Wikipedia, right? They have all these moderators, but if you think, oh, you just open a group and it's going to happen, you're going to be in for a really sad surprise. So that's number one for engagement, I think, to think of all of these things before anything happens at all. And then I think that was touched upon, but I think it's really important, don't spam. I've seen people post text from their website on LinkedIn as answers. We are the leader in blah blah, and you think, seriously? You think I'm going to buy from you? You have to create some kind of trust and be a person. And the last thing I want to say to that topic is there's something I call the imposter syndrome. So again, a lot of my clients, they will say, oh, could you do LinkedIn for me and engage in groups and things? And I say to them, I don't think that's a good idea, because I am Natascha Thomson, marketing consultant, and I am not an expert in IT consulting or some other area. So I once did a project where we tried this, and we tried to connect with CFOs. So on LinkedIn, there's a great CFO group, and I had a product marketing person feed me the answers to questions people were asking on LinkedIn, and people started to link in with me and send me private messages. They thought I knew the stuff for financial services, which I know nothing about, so it was freaky. And you want to build a long-term relationship. That's what social media is all about. Otherwise, you can just only do ads and put your emails out. If you make the effort to go on LinkedIn and engage with people, make sure it's somebody who builds a long-term relationship, who's credible, and if you don't have that person, I say don't do it. Of course you can have, I could do the account of the CEO, right, and connect with people, but again, somebody would have to feed the content, and I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that. So I think authenticity is a big must in social media to be successful.
Sure.
Yeah, and at one time I managed 15 different groups, and my response, that was a response to all the spam. I was back after the account passwords were active. All of a sudden groups are getting buried in spam. And I was a big fan of groups, so I just approached group managers out of nowhere maybe I was a member of, usually I was a member of the group, and I said, hey, I see you're being buried in, junk spam. I would like to volunteer to be a moderator. And a lot of them were like, why do you want to be the moderator? For example, one was the hotel group. At one time I managed the recruiters group, 120,000 members. And of course, their first question was, you don't appear to be in that field. And I said, look, my only focus is taking care of the spam. That's what I want to do for you. So they brought me in, kept a close eye on me. But you're absolutely right, Natasha. You can't, people in the group would assume that since I was a group manager or something like that, that I was in that field of expertise. And of course, which is very flattering when I have recruiters and members of the information security community and computer IT guys thinking I might be some sort of expert, which I always made it clear that I was not. But it really only works well. There are some issues that just a flat-out social media manager can deal with, like spam issues and posting issues. But there are a lot of things involved in community management where you have to be knowledgeable about that subject matter. So you can't just really plug someone in and expect them to create a dynamic group. You can have people as kind of part-time managers or moderators that maybe don't have a full grasp, but you need to have at least one person in charge of the big show that's going to, is fully invested in whatever that subject is and as an expert, because they're going to have to interact with community members at some point to resolve, issues or to, understand if somebody is talking about something, are they really an expert on it, or do you need to, have a chat with them? And Paul, thank you for joining. I just want to tell you, you're automatically muted when you jump in. If you know how to unmute yourself when you want to talk, feel free to jump in. And there you go. Excellent.
Okay.
Mark, I think can I echo one of Natascha's points about how difficult it is to start up a group, and people often think when they get into LinkedIn, wouldn't it be great for us to have a company, get a group going, and rather than actually choosing the option of joining a group which is already well populated where their prospects are anyway. But I think one area perhaps which can work really well for small businesses if they start a customer support group. And I've seen that work really well because it's much easier to bring the customers in. You already know these people, and it's a place where you can build and foster that engagement even further.
Well, I want to add one thing to that, and I'm actually not 100% in love with that, but you might have noticed LinkedIn did this redesign, and now the groups and the company pages look almost the same, to a degree where it's confusing sometimes when you click on a website and you go to the page, you're like, is this the company page or the LinkedIn group, right? It used to look quite different. And this is probably on purpose because it confuses people, and then it's good for advertising. But the point being, a company page costs you nothing, is low risk, and you can plug your products and services, even events. I mean, you can link URLs to anything, and people can follow that page. So if you don't want to have a group, just have a company page and see if you can get followers, and then you can still, it's not as good as a group, but for people with limited resources, it's a first step also to maybe learn how this works.
Actually, we were going to talk a little bit about company pages. We got about, maybe 10, 15 minutes left top. So why don't we, which one, Greg or Natascha? Which one of you would like to? Okay. Who, me or Greg?
Greg.
But what I would say about company pages is that there's been a lot of changes in company pages. For a long time, they were the backwater in LinkedIn. They were the forgotten place. It was a place where nobody visited. But in the last 12 months, LinkedIn have really added some functionality. They've got some brilliant insight and analysis now, and the whole section has been revamped. I think some of the things about LinkedIn, the company page to remember is that it's one click from your profile. And what I see now is that more and more people are going from the individual profile straight to the company page rather than going to the website, because it's easy, because you're staying within the LinkedIn environment. And secondly, that the company page is a fantastic opportunity to develop and promote some individual products and services, and invite your customers to recommend them. there's a new addition to the company page, which has only just come out this week, which is aimed at business units and brands, and it's like a kind of subgroup within the company page. It's called a showcase page, and that's just been launched this week, so that's very new. So that'd be interesting to see how that develops.
I just wanted to jump in on your comments on the profile. I don't think a lot of people realize that if you don't have a company page, and this might pertain more to smaller businesses, sole proprietors and stuff like that, if you haven't bothered to set up a company page, maybe you don't think you need one, if people click on your name, LinkedIn, it goes to LinkedIn Advanced Search, and it's going to take whatever you kind of put in as your job description and do a search. So if you think about it from your client's perspective, if they just happen to click on that link, LinkedIn is going to serve all of your competitors in a search window. So one reason I say make a company page is just create it as a placeholder. Even if you just have the basic information, the about information, link to your website, you might not think you need it, you might not want to do regular updates, that's cool. But set it up anyway, just so that if people do click that, you're not serving up all of your competition, in a search window. Make your clients find them all on their own. Don't make it easy for LinkedIn to serve that up. I don't think a lot of people, yeah.
Weird stuff comes up if you click on the company name without a company page. It's this random list of people who are weirdly associated to your business. I agree. And I don't know if we mentioned the logo. If you want the logo of your company to be displayed next to your job, then you have to have a company page with a logo on it. And one thing here, because I had this negative experience, I think, for a client where we set up a company page and then you have to re-enter your job. It's kind of stupid on LinkedIn, but you have to re-enter your job so that the logo will pop up. And then it sends out a notification saying blah blah is now the CEO of so and so, right? And my client was very unhappy about that. I think it's actually good marketing because any news in that case is good news, but I respect it, and I think I want people to know that you can turn that off. So if you go to your settings, you can say don't send updates for a while for any changes. So if you're looking for a job and you're updating your profile big time, I mean, we all know this, right? You get the LinkedIn feed and it says XYZ updated their profile and you're like, aha, they're looking for a new job, right? It's your manager, if he's connected with you, sees that too. So was a good lesson for me. People have different sensitivities. Make sure you do whatever is comfortable to you. But I think the company page is also another place for you to be found. And I think there's a word for it, which I can't remember right now, but there's these pages which are basically just brand pages, and you don't even have to do much with, like this, like you could be on Rebel Mouse and About Me, and you have this LinkedIn company page, and if somebody Googles you, because you're in so many places, Google algorithm favors you. So you want to make sure you are in all those places. It's a no-brainer. Like Mark and I, we were just chatting about that in his community. On your Google profile, you can add all these pages where you contribute and that you're affiliated with, and that increases your ranking. So there's a lot of simple things that require no future engagement, which I think is important for small companies who are like, whoa, I don't have time for this. Set up the basics, and then this will take care already of serving you up higher on Google without ever having to do anything else.
I'm going to jump in and add. Go ahead. Go ahead,
yeah,
Greg.
I think it's also worth talking about, if I can just share the screen for the moment, about brand ambassadors and customer ambassadors on a company page. This is the company page for Hewlett-Packard. They were the first company to reach 1 million followers, but they've now got about 1.5 million followers. But if you have all of your staff following, your employees, your salespeople, customer service people, etc., following the company page, they then have lots of their customers following and connections following. So all of a sudden your reach becomes tremendous. So when Hewlett-Packard reached 1 million followers, they estimated that meant they could actually communicate with they could influence, their influence network from their company page was 40 million people, all of whom by definition were interested in LinkedIn. How much would you pay to advertise to 40 million people? It's a tremendous resource, the company page.
So something I wanted to jump into on the company pages. a lot of people don't bother to set up products and services. Okay, they just basically set it up as a brochure page. I want to point out something. You know, LinkedIn makes it a little difficult for us to connect with each other. Sure, if you're a member of a group, you're considered in network and you can send a connect invite pretty easy. There's some other ways to work around that. But think about it. Come to your company page as a stranger and look at how difficult it is. Sure, you might have provided a link to your website, which means they're going to have to navigate to their website and find your contact form there. But from the top level of that page, there really is no way to connect with you directly. If you create products and services, you can actually add up to 3 people for each product and service, and they'll actually be able to send an email directly to that person without being a first level connection. And the cool thing about that too is that when a client sends that email through that contact on your LinkedIn company page under a product or service, that email is going to contain their LinkedIn email address that's associated with their account. So if you wanted to, you could take that email address, and even if you're, you know, third level network or however, you know, you can use that email address to become a first level connection of theirs and connect directly. Otherwise, you're leaving it up to them to try to jump through a couple hoops to get a hold of you. So set up at least one product or service. You know, and it also works very well if you're a larger company that might have multiple branches or locations. You can be a little creative, and you, like I say, you can have 3 contacts for each one of those items. So you can make sure that information is contact information is being sent directly to the people who handle, you know, your marketing or your sales for a specific product or something like that. So don't step around that. That's one of the more valuable things. You can also embed videos just like your profile. You can put videos on your profile, on your company page. Sorry, you can have links to other specials, which might go to a landing page. For example, one thing I use the products and services for is each one of those sub pages goes directly to a landing page on my website. So I'm not just sending everybody to the home page. So, you know, think about that. You don't want somebody to have to find your company on LinkedIn and then go rooting around on your website to try to find whatever it was they were just looking at already. You know, set up that service like I might have, you know, setting up a group or something. Let's say I did that for a living. I would have a link that would take them straight to the landing page on my website where they would, you know, go ahead and ask for more information. So just a couple tips there for your company pages. We have a couple new people. Hey, Juan, if any of you, Juan or Paul, want to introduce yourselves there, we are going to wrap it up here in just a couple minutes, but feel free to unmute yourselves and offer a couple of thoughts there.
Hi, Jason.
Hey, Greg. This is Scott Everett. Quick question.
Go ahead, Scott.
Good to be back. The HP example, was it 4 to 1? I didn't hear the exact number. So for 1 million members, how many impressions did they think they had?
Yeah, the figures from the original case study was a million followers.
There we go.
And a 40 million influence network.
I'm sorry, I had to mute you, Paul. Your speakers are feeding back into your microphone, so we're getting a little feedback there. So, Greg, were you answering that for him?
Yeah. I was just saying that the figures were Hewlett-Packard themselves reckoned there was a million followers on the company page, but that gave them an direct influence network of 40 million.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, we did have a couple little tips and tricks things we were going to discuss, but I think we've hit on quite a few of those in the conversation, and we're coming right up on an hour. Greg or Natascha, is there anything you wanted to add before we close this hangout out?
I really would like to close by saying, know why you're doing what you're doing, and then think about how you're going to measure success. If you're on LinkedIn just to host your resume, that's fine. But if you are trying to generate leads or trying to establish yourself as a thought leader, you need a really good strategy so that you can do everything in line with that. And that includes your brand. And just to finish with that comment, as I said, you know, you have to be consistent over all of your social media channels. So think about who you are, what your brand is, and don't have people see you on LinkedIn, and then on Twitter they have no idea who you are. Maybe even have the same picture, and then, you know, other communities where you blog, maybe just come up with a blurb about yourself and use that everywhere, and maybe change that once in a while, but don't confuse people. If you don't have a brand, they don't know you. You know, you're building trust by being consistent.
Yeah, and I just say, Mark, that you know, whether you're a big company or a small company, it's really important that all of your employees are on LinkedIn and or you're connected to all of your customers, so you can really leverage those employee and customer networks. And it's important also to be active, not just to have a LinkedIn account, but to be actively using it.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I just wanted to touch base with Katie and Scott and see if you had any thoughts before we wrap this, or Kelly, I'm sorry, Kelly and Scott, see if you have any thoughts before we wrap this up.
Is there a way I can share my notes? Is there a way I can just post my notes for whoever attended?
Yeah, actually you can on the event form. I'll get with you. You could either post them there and also link from the event form and the YouTube video. So I'll make sure that any additional notes you have are included in that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to thank y'all for showing up today, and in particular Natascha and Greg for sharing their expertise with members of the Sanctuary Networking community, and of course anybody else from Google or LinkedIn who might have tuned in. We did get quite a few viewers for this Hangout, so that was excellent. For those of you that are kind of new to Google Plus or something like that, it makes it a little easier to comment on the event forum and stuff like that, but we try to also run a Twitter chat too. So if we host another one of these events, we'll try to make sure that whatever we do, we can kind of bring you in and include you in the conversation. And we talk about LinkedIn, we talk about Google Plus, of course, because we have to. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, Twitter, we discuss all kinds of not just social networks, but productivity and networking tactics for small businesses. And so I look forward to seeing you all again, and I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was late.